Welcome to the Debt to Financial Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Victor Lagos, and the founder of Lagos Financial. I've been in the finance and lending industry for 16 years, and I've personally made financial mistakes and learned from them. I started this podcast to share stories and lessons on my own journey and to share insights that may help others on their journey. And I interview people that I've connected with that share the same values and mission to help others create financial freedom. My goal with this podcast is to share raw, honest, transparent, and helpful stories that you can relate to and inspires you to take control of your finances and only have debt that brings you closer to financial freedom. Everything on this podcast is general in nature and for education purposes only. None of your personal objectives, financial situation, or needs has been taken into consideration. I highly recommend you seek personal, financial, legal, taxation, and credit advice before you take any action on what has been heard on this podcast. Welcome to episode 9 of the Debt to Financial Freedom podcast. I am your host, Victor Lagos. I am also the founder of Lagos Financial, which is a residential and commercial brokerage. Today, I've got Harry Bennetto to come in, and he is the head of sales of Prop Hero. And if you don't know what Prop Hero is, it's the next generation wealth platform that simplifies property investing. They partner with their clients for life to take care of the process end to end. Welcome, Harry.
Thanks for having me this morning, Victor.
No worries, mate. I wanted to just share with the audience a little bit of our story because we met last year and we actually talked about doing a podcast back then.
Yeah.
But at the time I hadn't even started this one yet. And I really liked what Prop Hero was doing. And it sort of came to my attention because my old boss, his client was your current boss, which is the founder of Prop Hero. His name is Michael.
There you go. Very small world.
Yeah. And what I like, I guess the point of difference, and if you can share a little bit about what Prop Hero actually does, is that for normal buyers agents, they can make a decent amount of money, and they usually self-fund. So that money they make, they end up, using to grow the business organically. But Prop Hero is a bit of a technology company, and it actually was able to raise capital to grow. And it's only been around for about 12 months or so.
Been around just coming up to 2 years in July. So
well, already.
Time flies indeed.
Can you give us a bit of history about Prop Hero and the founders and sort of the success you guys have had so far?
Yeah, definitely. So business was founded in Sydney in 2021. And the idea came about through one of the founders, Michael, who mentioned having a pretty average experience buying an owner-occupied property through a buyer's agent. Felt like it cost a bomb, and then they ended up finding the property themselves and didn't really get any value for it. So the idea of Prop Hero using a data-driven approach to buy investment properties exclusively has blossomed from there. And I guess like the primary motive is to firstly find a property that's going to outperform the market, but then make the process seamless end to end. So the first-time buyers holding their hand step by step throughout that journey, whether it's connecting them with a mortgage broker, conveyancing, pest and building, having the confidence to go and buy a property interstate when they're not going to go see it themselves. That's all a big part of it. Or if it's helping professional investors who have several properties to top up their portfolio and access a different market that they didn't really know about or knew was a good option.
Okay, you made a good point about you focus purely on investment properties because a lot of buyers agents out there, they'll go out to the inspections for you and they'll negotiate for your dream home, and they're getting you off-market deals because obviously it's hard to, compete, being a one-time buyer, whereas a buyer's agent that buys a lot of properties sometimes get exclusive access to properties. But when it comes to investment properties, it's really about buying performing assets and knowing the locations, the ideal locations based on what you can afford and based on your specific goals, right? So my question would be around, one is the data. You talked about data. So how many data points does Prop Hero actually use? And then how does it get all that data and sort of decide, the ideal areas, and then from there, select the properties that you offer to your clients?
Yeah. So Victor, we're using 200 odd data variables, and we've got data on every single suburb in Australia, which is just over 15,000. And we're constantly doing analysis on each and every suburb to decide firstly, which areas we're going to target from a macroeconomic point of view, and then really narrowing it down from there once we've targeted those greater regions.
Yep.
Once we're picking our suburbs, it's really trying to de-risk it as much as possible. So we want to buy in an area that's got strong economic growth, which is usually driven by job creation, population growth, and a number of other factors, but then try to de-risk it from a supply and then a demand point of view. So really taking control of the supply metrics is really important. So we want to buy in an area where there's like not a lot of land available for redevelopment. So we're buying in mature areas that are really going to gentrify quicker than what the rest of the country is going to do. So that should be an indicator of income growth and, of course, property price growth over time.
Okay. And how far does the data go? Like, do you go back to when residential property data was available, like say through CoreLogic, or do you go even further back and sort of put it into a computer where it can actually analyze data from like the 1800s, for example?
Yeah, we keep it pretty modern. We don't go back as far as the 1800s, although
Okay.
you probably could have bought a property in Sydney for about $10 back then, or pounds, or whatever we use. So
Imagine putting the growth in for that.
yeah. I mean, if we could go back in time, that'd be great. But we're using data that's readily available in the market. We've got about 30 different data sources, and that's property data, for instance, like a CoreLogic, like you mentioned, but also macroeconomic data, which can be sourced from, say, the ABS, or we're really big on sourcing climate data, and I think we're the only player in the market who really digs deep there. So we're looking at the potential impact of climate change, as well as like flood and bushfire risk of an address. So the idea there is that, you could be in a position to buy an excellent property, but there's so many different things that you need to factor in, and you could quite easily overlook something before, taking the plunge and deciding to buy an investment property.
Yep.
And then, little do you know that there's something wrong with it that you don't have any control over, or you missed it. So it's really trying to focus on the fact that if we de-risk it as much as possible, we can help you find an asset that will perform higher than what you will get in the market if you were to do it yourself, or say use a traditional buyer's agent.
Yeah. And you touched on it earlier about buying property interstate. It is a difficult thing to do on your own. When I bought a property, my wife and I bought a property in Tasmania a few years ago. That was without a buyer's agent, and I spent a lot of hours just calling agents and trying to learn about the local market, about the different suburbs and the demographic of people, potential rental returns, and then just to work out if there's going to be capital growth. That in itself, I don't know how to figure that out, right? So there's got to be some level of understanding what's the supply and the demand in that area, so you can get some immediate growth, and then I guess the macroeconomic stuff that's going to give you that long-term growth as well. But the second property, I used the buyer's agent, and it made life a lot easier. But that was a couple of people searching the market. So they obviously build the relationships, but they sort of hone in on, yes, they're using data, but they're processing it at human speed. Are you guys using like AI and things like that to sort of amalgamate all of that and give you, the answers rather than, a whole bunch of spreadsheets?
Yeah, exactly. So we've got it all built into an AI model, and our data and AI team are constantly working with it hands-on, but there is a powerful like AI machine that we're using to make it as automated as possible. But we're talking a lot about data. We've still got people working for us and hands-on in each of the markets that we buy in. So currently we're buying in a few select areas in Brisbane and then a handful of suburbs in Adelaide. And we've got our team that are there who will inspect the properties and really have an intimate knowledge of those markets, so that, street by street, not just suburb by suburb, we know where to buy. Okay,
so you do have boots on the ground.
Yeah,
to do absolutely. The inspections. Okay, and know that these are the right locations or the right within the pockets that you've located based on the data.
That's right, yes.
Okay, so that was the next question I was going to ask is, what's the experience like for investors when they come through to Prop Hero compared to going through another buyer's agent?
Yeah, it's a pretty like seamless experience. Like, we've got like hundreds of clients now, and I've never been associated with a business where your clients are your biggest brand ambassadors quite like this. So we've got 80% of our clients referring us family and friends just because they have such a great experience. And firstly, it's targeting a majority of our client base are based in Sydney and Melbourne, the two most expensive markets in the country. They're looking for property opportunities outside of those markets. They might have an owner-occupied place, or they might be rent vesting, and don't really know where to start. So the ability to try to locate a new suburb that is going to outperform is really important, and then linking that towards the existing performance that we've achieved since we've been around for almost 2 years now. It's been a key driver for why I believe that there's been a lot of success with our model. And then having a fantastic platform that's going to support them throughout that property investment journey, and really giving them the confidence to build up equity and buy again and again through us.
Yeah, okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the app that you guys are working on? I've sort of registered, to test it out. And is it in the beta testing, or is it out there for the market at the moment?
So the app is 100% available for our paying clients, and there might be a few changes there. So watch this space.
Okay.
You'll be first to know. But what the app is there to do is to really communicate the data side of the business and the buying process. So how do we get to this property at this address within this suburb, and working it back through that journey from macroeconomic supply, demand, and then the property characteristics themselves, and really combining or connecting all the dots there to give you total confidence in our approach, and knowing that there's purchases happening that are purely based on generating the best financial return. It's not on a convenience basis. We're only going to go where the data leads us to, and then we'll set up the networks for making that happen.
So within the app, they'll be able to see the properties that, I guess, match their specific, objectives and their affordability. And I know that you guys sort of focus in around that 500 to $1 million sort of price point, or do you guys go over that as well?
So the way that it works is we'll set up a strategy session with our clients once we onboard them, and they'll get access to our app. We'll figure out firstly what their budget and then their strategy is. So there might be a skew towards income, or a hybrid of capital growth and also income, or just flat out, I want to achieve as high capital growth as possible, and I don't mind having, say, a highly negatively geared property. So with that, we're targeting properties within the price range of about 300,000 to 750,000. And yeah, there's a range of different strategies within those markets, but day in, day out, I'm getting asked, why don't you buy in Sydney, or why don't you buy in Melbourne? And the relative affordability is just not the same as what you can find in other markets interstate. And, you get the benefit of higher rental yields, higher projected capital growth, lower entry point, which usually means it's easier to create higher percentage-based growth. And yeah, going back to this app, we are finding the property on there, providing like a seamless transition to actually purchasing the property, settling on the property. And then once you own this property, you can actually track the performance of it. So we've got data coming in through valuations from Domain, and you'll get a valuation that updates every month of your total portfolio consolidated view. And then also you can track it from an income growth as well.
So that's my next question is, say you're working with an investor that's got 5 properties. There's not that many out there that do, but let's just say you are one of those investors. They come on and they want to get the 6th property with you guys. Can they use the app to plug in the data from all their existing properties and track the performance from a cash flow perspective, and of course the capital growth that property's had since they've owned it, and I guess the projected growth of where it's going?
Yeah, absolutely. So many of our clients will have existing properties within their portfolio. It might be the place they live in, it might be another couple of investment properties, and they will upload the data of those properties that we haven't helped them buy, and it just gives them an overall view of their entire property portfolio. So it's really handy from like watching an equity growth point of view, getting, say, smart recommendations to decide what to do next, whether it's to buy or to sell, or really take a long-term view on how to approach their property wealth creation journey.
Yeah, I guess it's really about optimizing their existing portfolio. And it might be time to sell it if it hasn't performed, and that would free up some capital and some borrowing capacity to get another one, better performing property. What about the actual expenses, including the loans, because a lot of that's available in terms of data, right? You can plug into your net bank, and that would obviously feed in with bank feeds about what are your property expenses that are coming out, how much rental income is being deposited, and then what's the repayment for your mortgage. Do you guys allow for those sort of API connections where they don't have to manually type that information in themselves?
Yeah, so we've got a financials tab on our app. So we're doing the property recommendation, the property tracking, but then we've also got the affordability test there. So you can get an understanding of what that initial investment might be based on a property at, say, $600,000, 10% or 20% deposit, all the associated costs, whether it's stamp duty, conveyancing, pest and building.
And buyer's agent fee.
Yeah. And then also you can get an overall view of what it's going to look like based on an estimated rental yield and any other costs that are involved, say property manager fees or council rates as well.
But this is estimates. But when it comes to actuals and you want to sort of monitor your existing portfolio, you have to plug that in yourself.
For the properties that we assist our clients to buy, we can do it for them. But for other properties that they own, then they'd have to upload it manually.
Okay. So it's not like where you just categorize it from NetBank sort of thing. We say, look, that was related to this property, and it will sort of create a rule or remember. It's not like that where you can do it with, say, Xero accounting software or other sort of wealth tracking.
Not yet, but it could definitely be something that we're working on too. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's sort of the solution that I'd like to be able to offer my clients. Because it is hard to sort of track, and come tax time, your accountant's going to ask for all that information. It'd be good to sort of say, here you go. This is accurate. It's been pulled straight from the bank statements. And then, store all the council rates and the water rates and, the insurance policies all into one place and say, share. And then they've got it. And you don't have to try to save it all in your folders and try to dig it up at tax time. It's all in one place. So that would be good. Watch this space, guys. Sounds like these guys are on a pretty cool trajectory. All right. So the next question I've got is, not many people know this. Well, I'm aware of it because we've spoken about it, is that Prop Hero is not just for Australian customers. It's also international customers, because one of the founders, Pablo, is actually from Spain. And you guys buy properties for people living in Spain, but also for Australians that want to buy properties in Spain. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So the bulk of our traffic we are doing is for local Spanish people buying in Spain. And it's a really exciting market. There's a much lower entry point for buying properties. So some of our clients are buying properties for anywhere between sort of 50 and 90,000 euros.
Wow.
So pretty much.
Is that houses or apartments?
Apartments.
Okay.
Within one of the major cities there, not Barcelona or Madrid. So it's a very interesting market. It's kind of similar to Australia, where Sydney and Melbourne being really inflated relative to the rest of the country. And there's a lot of value in, say, the regional centres that are still several 100,000 people living there. The business is going really well. We're now doing half of our revenue over there. It's totally uncharted territory. There's not that property investing madness like we have in Australia, but in a few years' time, with the impact that we're having there, hopefully there will be.
Wow, that really sounds interesting. So if someone wanted to buy property in Spain that lived in Australia, they would need cash because they can't borrow from Spanish banks unless they were living there and earning an income there, right?
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, chat with your mortgage broker or chat with Victor, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we have helped Aussies buy properties in Spain. We're not doing as much as what we do, say, buying in Australia because of that.
Yeah.
So, but the investments over there are very attractive. Like the gross rental yield is usually around that 11% mark. And
11% gross. But what are the expenses? So what does that end up
It
being
usually
net?
finishes up 7 or 8%. So, some of our more mature investors, once they've got several more growth targeted properties, might be looking at this strategy down the track just purely from an income point of view. So, yeah, it's a really interesting market. There's still plenty of growth there and, a very low entry point.
So if someone did have the cash, so it would be about 150,000 thereabouts, maybe a little bit more Australian dollars.
Usually a bit less.
A bit less?
Yeah, from an Aussie cash point of view, it's usually around that 120.
120, okay. So let's just say it was 120,000 and then they were getting an 8% net return. That's $9,600 a year they're getting in cash flow. So that's already $185 a week they're getting just by putting $120,000 down. However, people always look at a combination of capital growth as well as cash flow, right? Because that's the power of property, because you usually can leverage, which allows you to expand, what you put in versus what the value you're getting in the market. But this one, because they're buying it in cash, then really they want to know that they're going to get a return on that, not just the cash flow. So what sort of growth percentages are you looking at if someone was to buy in Spain?
I'd have to just refresh the exact numbers, but I believe it's been marginally lower than what we've seen in Australia. So in 2022, we did 12 or 13% capital growth in Australia. I think we did closer to 5% in Spain in 2022.
Okay. No, I understand. So realistically, it's still a good cash flow return because if you're not, because people need income, right? And the whole point of this podcast is to teach people different strategies and insights that's going to allow them to create multiple streams of income that's going to get them the financial freedom. Right?
Yeah, definitely. I think one last thing I'd say about it is that where the value might be, and sure, it is a cash purchase, whether it's through equity or pure cash, but a lot of our clients are benefiting in Spain, particularly with like significantly under market properties, because it's a far less mature property market there. Like if you go on the real estate apps there, you'll see most people have taken the photos themselves. They haven't like tidied up the places for them selling them. There's not really that same maturity that you have in Australia, where you try and make it look as good as possible. You do a minor renovation to try and get an extra 10% on the sale price. So there's always huge opportunity getting discounted properties there, which is what a lot of our clients benefit from by using us.
And over here, if you were to buy a property and you bought it under market, or you waited till it had some growth, you touched on it earlier where you want to go for the next one, because you can, if you have the borrowing capacity, you can extract the equity from that existing property because it's gone up in value, or you obviously bought it under market, and then you use that as a deposit for the next one. In Spain, if you were to do the same and buy under market and you're sitting on all this equity, what do you do with it if you can't borrow it to use it for the next one? Is it more when you sell the property, you can kind of, say, look, now I've made all this money, but then you lose the cash flow?
If you're earning Aussie dollars and you've got a Spanish property portfolio, it's really up to you what you want to do with it. Like you'll build up the cash more steadily. Yeah. If there is significant value that's built up, look, I'd have to just refresh on exactly what the lending requirements are, but I understand it's very difficult to borrow money if you've got an Aussie income.
Yeah. But that's why it's more targeted at Spanish locals.
Yeah.
Because they can borrow and do the same strategies that people do here.
I think like if you're an Aussie and you've got money in a different currency that tends to be a bit stronger than ours, i.e. the euro, over time it can be very handy to have a second income stream for sure.
Yeah. So it can also just be, I guess, an investment for someone that wants to buy property in Australia, but they don't have much of a deposit. So they can sort of set and forget, buy 120 grand, set and forget it. You guys will help obviously with the property manager, and anytime there's, maintenance issues, it's obviously hard to navigate when it's interstate, let alone international, right? So then they don't have to worry about that. And then over time, the currency is stronger, goes up in value, or they bought it under market. They can eventually cash in on that. And that 120 may be worth, 200 or more. And now all of a sudden they've got a larger deposit. They can use that as a contribution to buy something here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool. And you guys are also expanding into other countries as well. It's not just Spain, right?
Yeah, so having European founders has really made our business model have a huge emphasis on global growth. So we were only in Australia for, say, 6 or 7 months before we launched Spain. And we've got a couple of countries we're looking at very closely in Europe, and also a couple of countries in Asia that we're exploring at the moment. So it's more just a matter of when we're going to enter those markets, and the growth we've experienced in both Australia and Spain is going to fuel that growth into these other international markets.
Yeah, and then obviously the entry point is going to be similar, maybe even better than getting into Spain, right?
Yeah,
Especially if you're talking about
potentially.
Asia.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of investors in Australia who can't necessarily access property prices here, whether you're looking at properties in that sort of 300K plus range. So it is always great to be presented with opportunities that are international if you've got total confidence in what you're doing.
Yeah, just thinking about it while we're talking, I do have clients that have hit the ceiling on their borrowing capacity because, we've had 10 rate hikes, maybe 11 now.
I think 11 now.
11 rate hikes since in the last 12 months. And that's really squeezed the borrowing capacity for a lot of Australians. So they're there's been about a 40 to 45% reduction. So someone who could borrow $1 million a year ago can only borrow about sort of 550 grand now, right? Which is crazy to think about it, right? Or maybe 600 grand, around that mark. So if that's the case, if you've got enough borrowing capacity and you're still sitting on equity, because a lot of people, their property prices went up the last few years, right? They might be able to have enough borrowing capacity to extract, say, 150 grand worth of cash. But if that's only enough for a deposit in Australia and they can't get the next loan to buy a property, say for 400,000 or 300, approximately whatever they need, then they're sort of sitting on 150 grand, just doing nothing for them.
Mm.
Yes, they might pay, 5-6% interest on it, but if they can get 8% return overseas, they're still cash flow positive, right? So then they're borrowing equity from a property here, using that to buy a property in another market, and the rent is enough to pay the interest on the mortgage in Australia and cover the costs. So it's still your money working for you. So I think there's still an opportunity for people to tap into that with Prop Hero, because as far as I'm aware, there's no other buyer's agency in Australia that does this to help people buy in other countries.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure it's 100% unique to Prop Hero.
Awesome. And the cost. I know that you guys are, a lot of value that you bring, but the cost for investors is not as expensive as other buyer's agents. Is that right?
Yeah, we're usually coming in around that 20 to 50% lower than a traditional buyer's agent. And it comes down to having a flat fee that I might not share unless someone does want to reach out and have a conversation. But it's really important to us to have a flat fee, to have total transparency on the fees and not receiving any financial kickbacks from any of our partners. So we try our best to set up a network to make it as easy as possible for our clients to buy a property, whether it's connected with a mortgage broker, the conveyancer, pest and building, a financial planner or an accountant. And it's really important to make sure these third parties remain totally independent of us and are more just complementary services to provide an even better outcome for the client.
Yeah, amazing. I for me, I always have a trusted network of professionals that I refer my customers to if they want a referral. But of course, if they've already got a buyer's agent that they're working with, or they want to source the property themselves, that's okay. And I do commercial properties as well. So occasionally I might have a customer that is happy to work with their residential mortgage broker, and I'll work on the commercial stuff. So I think it's important that the customer is in the driver's seat. They choose who they want to work with and who they resonate with. But if they do want an introduction, the opportunity is always there. So if you do want to connect with Harry and the Prop Hero team, you can send me an email and I can happily do the introduction, because I can imagine you guys will get a lot of inquiries online and all the presents that you're doing. So when it comes from a referral, that it's sort of a priority, right? You know that it's coming from a mortgage broker, it's coming from someone that's legitimate. I usually will run the numbers first as well, so that way it's not just here, have a chat with Prop Hero. Well, let's see what you can actually borrow, because you might have an idea that you want to buy $500,000, but banks will only lend you 200 grand, so it may not be the right time, or you might sort of weigh up all the costs and see if it's actually worth doing it right now, and then I can introduce. So reach out to me and just maybe you do an email to Victor at contact@lagosfinancial.com.au and just put in the subject Prop Hero, and we'll start the conversation from there. So I want to ask you, if someone does want to find out a little bit more about Prop Hero, what you do, sort of the types of properties that you guys have bought in the past, how can they find this information? How can they connect with Prop Hero?
Yeah, so if you either go through the Lagos financial channel, that's all good. But otherwise, if you just jump on online prophero.com, you can book in a session or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to have a chat.
Awesome. And you're the national sales manager at the moment? So
I'm head of sales and revenue, Victor. So yeah, it's a role that's ever evolving in an exciting and pretty dynamic environment. Yeah. And yeah, so overseeing all parts of the transaction.
Awesome. So customers may not connect with you directly. It's going to be one of your team, property coaches and whatnot.
Look, I'll do my best to endeavour to connect with them, and otherwise we've got an excellent team that will support them through their property buying journey.
Awesome. Look, I just want to say thanks for coming on. I think you guys are doing some great things. You know, you've heard some of the opportunities that are out there. Definitely jump online, prophero.com. If you want an introduction, reach out to me. Keep doing what you're doing, and definitely I'm going to be following this space to see when you tap into other markets.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Victor.
No worries. Thanks, Harry. Thanks a lot for listening. If you enjoyed that, please tune into our next episode and follow us on our socials.